Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Coach Replay Show. I'm your host, Cory Camp, and today I have half of a mother-daughter duo with me, Joyce Akridge. She's former principal, now retired. I'm going to let her tell you a little bit more about herself. But I was telling Joyce just before we came on air how perfect this episode is for this theme that we have rounding out the 2021 or the 2021 year, which is around empowering teachers and those that we support as leaders and coaches. But then also last week, I shared a little bit around how we can celebrate excellence and do that intentionally, and how it can also build collective efficacy. So it just happens to be a nice little segue into our episode here with Joyce today. So welcome, Joyce. It's so great to have you.
Thank you so much, Cory. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself. Former principal.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that, and your daughter Jasmine as well, who's a teacher.
Yes.
So she's teaching right now. She wasn't able to join us for today's episode, but you guys do work together a lot.
Yes, we formed our company in 2019. I retired. I had health issues and I retired, but I didn't want to be out of the game, so to speak. I still wanted to advocate for our students in any way that I could. So we formed our own coaching and consulting company, and it's called Urban Education Solutions. And we say that our tagline is, we solve problems in education that are uniquely urban. For 44 years, I was in a public school system. She works for public schools as well. So we appreciate public schools. And we've had some opportunities to speak at Sibme and other places and do some work to help those children who sometimes are traditionally or historically more marginalized. So I'm excited to be here to talk with you about collective efficacy.
Absolutely. Yeah, you and Jasmine both co-presented at the Better Together Summit this last year. I remember your session. It was great. It was well attended. So let's hop into this. Collective efficacy,
Okay.
perfect for when we think about empowering our teachers. So you're coming to us today with 3 ways that a principal can inspire collective teacher efficacy. So what do you recommend as some ways to inspire and develop teacher efficacy, collective teacher efficacy on a campus?
Well, my first point, Cory, is that you need to examine your school culture. Is your school culture one that emphasizes silos, or does it emphasize working together and teamwork and collective efficacy? Because you can't have the collective efficacy if you primarily have a team that works in silo. So that is one of the points that I want to bring up. As a principal, you should model that. They should see you working with other principals. If you're an instructional coach, they should see you modeling, working with other coaches, so that we can come up with solutions to solve some of the problems in education that are unique to right now. And I think this is a very timely topic when you think about all that's happened post-pandemic. We need other ways to try to help accelerate learning for some of our boys and girls. And so if we tried the silo approach and that approach has not been effective, then we need to see what else is out there so that we can accelerate the learning for our students. You mentioned empowering teachers. That's one of the things you need to take a look at as you examine your culture. Do you invite participation from your staff on issues that concern them and the students? Is there participatory decision making? Those are the hard questions you need to ask yourself. And if you ask yourself that and you know that there are some areas that have deficits, then you need to work to build that so that you can inspire teacher collective efficacy in your culture. Um, I would say, as I mentioned before, show, don't tell. Let them see you working with others on your campus. Get into goal setting with your staff, not just goals that you're handing down. I've had that experience that the staff, when I was a principal at one time, they didn't want to worry about the school improvement plan. They wanted me to get it together and they would do what I say. But that doesn't work anymore today. People want to be a part of the decision making and the planning and, of course, the success. So that's an important thing to co construct goals together and work together, goals that involve them and that they feel that they can attain. And it's okay if you're not the person that's the head of the committee, because school is for everybody, and that includes our teachers.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love this. And you bring up some good points. We have definitely discovered now more than ever post pandemic that we truly are better together. And we've got a more of an emphasis on accelerated instruction than we ever have before. And that can't be done in silos. It can't be done alone. So what I heard you say is that it's important for us to start first with some reflection about the culture that we have fostered that currently exists and some concrete things that we might be able to do to build that teacher collective
Mhm.
efficacy. Now, I want to remind folks, for if you are viewing and you're going, okay, but what is collective teacher efficacy? I shared a little bit in last week's episode, but essentially, it's not just the belief that as a collective unit, as a team or as a campus, we, the teachers, have the skills and the resources to meet our students' needs, to be able to accelerate their learning and support them socially and emotionally. It's not just that belief, but that belief has to be also supported by evidence, right? And so I love the idea of show, not just tell, right? They need to see some evidence of you engaging in collective activities of learning and conversation and working towards that goal. But then goals should be that collective piece too, that co-construction.
Yes.
I love that. So can you tell me, Joyce, have you seen some examples of collective teacher efficacy that have made a difference in student achievement? Because John Hattie says it's the number one thing within a school's
Right.
locus of control that can make an impact, not just the number one thing, but has the most potential, right? I think it's
Right.
3 years in a year
That's
worth of
right.
growth. Yeah, 3 years of
Yeah.
growth in a year's worth of effort. So
Yes.
lots of bang for your buck, so to
That's
speak.
right.
So have you seen examples? What
I
did it look
have.
like,
I
sound like?
have.
Okay,
I
tell
have
us about
in
those.
my experience as a principal, and I have vicariously enjoyed it as I looked at my daughter's work at her school, the joint work she's done with other teachers.
Mm-hmm.
As a principal, I think about the first time I really got a notion of it. And it wasn't anything that I led, it was from grassroots, from the teachers who cast the vision and who co constructed their goals together. And we had at one time, many years ago, this whole notion that if your school did well, that we got a cash bonus. And so it could have been that the teachers would have decided, and this is when we did more separation of teaching. Some people had the general ed teachers, the general ed students. And then at the time, we put the GT students in a separate classroom with the teacher. And I know we're doing blends of that now. And so those teachers could have made their goal if you had the students that were more astute, so to speak, a lot easier than those who had struggling learners who composed the majority of their classroom. But I remember my third grade team said, no, we're not going to do that. If anybody gets the money, we're all going to get the money. And so they worked together and they shared strategies. And this was before the day of PLCs or any of that. They just decided it's all or none. And it just took root with the other grade levels. And they decided it's all or none. Well, we did. Many times we made that goal and we were able to receive that bonus money. And it was because they helped each other and they felt like no student's going to get around us. So sometimes there would be a student from one class in with another class, or a couple of them going to another class, so that they could reach everybody. They felt like they had the confidence, the resources, the skills, the vision. And that's one of the things you have to do with collective teacher efficacy. You have to do vision casting and keep that vision out there so you have a goal that you're working on and working toward, and it's all of us. And even in that spirit of all of us, we could get the biggest amount of money. I remember is that the largest amount, I should say, would get $900. Well, I didn't believe in a lot of out of school suspension. And so my librarian said, well, I don't have classes every day. I've got a table back here. If there's someone that needs to stay for an in-school suspension or whatever, timeout, let them come in here. So when the money came, I gave her part of the money, because that's what that is all about. We all work together to help student achievement and learning outcomes. So that's one instance of a time that I've seen it. Another more recent one was with the first grade team at the last school I was the principal of. And I had other teams do this as well, but I'm going to highlight and lift up the first grade team right now. We had a hard time that year finding staff. Does that sound familiar this year? We had a
Yes.
hard time. And so finally we selected someone, but unfortunately it didn't work out for her to remain with us. So she left us in December. And there were 3 other team members to the first grade team. And we tried getting a good substitute teacher, but there is no substitute for your first string. If you will let me use that basketball term, I love basketball. And the substitutes weren't working out. So the team came to me after school one day and said, we have a proposal for you. And I said, sure. Now, by this time, we were into structured teacher planning time, PLCs. So we had that structure already established at the school. And they said, we have an option. And I said, sure. They said, get a substitute, Mrs. Akridge, but let that substitute take care of small groups, remediation. When kids haven't earned recess, back in the day, sometimes they didn't go out. If they didn't do their reading steps, because we required the students to read 2 reading steps every day, 15 minutes each. Maybe that person can help them catch up on their steps and grade papers. But we want that class to be divided and put into each of our rooms. So they felt confident about the skill of each other, enough about they knew each other's work and where the strengths of each other of the team was, who had what strength on the team. And so they ended up taking those students into their class, had large classes at first grade, but it worked so well because they believed they could do it. And it's more, as you said, than belief. It is taking action. And that's what they did. Because we can cooperate all day long, and
Mhm.
I highlighted in one of the things that I was working on, that cooperation isn't necessarily the same as collaboration and collective teacher efficacy, because I can cooperate with you and do my part and say done. And
Mhm.
it's what I would say. I learned this from one of the conferences I attended. It's a getmo, good enough to move on, getmo. But when you really truly have teacher collective teacher efficacy, it goes beyond collaboration. There's that ownership of the students, the responsibility for their achievement, the vision you have for those students, that you won't let them slip through the cracks, so to speak, that you all are all on board about working with who you have to bring them from point A to point B.
I love those examples. Those are all amazing examples. Sometimes it is that extrinsic motivator, right? It's the opportunity to earn a reward or even a cash bonus, which is amazing, especially for a teacher's salary. But then also the kind of togetherness of just being able to deal with a situation that's really hard, one that we
Mhm.
all know all too well, and are struggling with currently. How do we do that? And I think that's your first grade team example is an amazing one where they were willing to increase their class size, but be strategic in how they worked together and how they utilized the support staff to be able to do that. So it
And
really is kind of coming together, right? It's that kind of
right,
schoolhouse feel, that team feel, and it again, it has the ability to not just, I think, support our teachers, right? In that they all feel supported, that they're in it together and they are not alone, and that they've got their peers, their colleagues right there alongside them. But I think it also has this huge impact on our student learning, of course, right? That
yes,
acceleration piece.
that's
But I think
right.
there's something more to that. Do you see um, teams with good collective efficacy that have students who also are maybe a little bit more collective in their
Right.
engagements?
Yes, exactly. Um, that student voice, that student efficacy, that I can do it. We
Mm-hmm.
really focused a lot before I retired 2 years ago on um, grit,
Mm-hmm.
perseverance, powering through it, all of those kinds of things that are part of SAIL now. We didn't have a formal name for it, but we had noticed some things on campus that we needed to address. Children giving up so quickly, not wanting to power through things, wanting you to
Mm-hmm.
tell them the answer. And we just knew that that wasn't going to cut it, that teacher dependent students don't do well on high stakes testing. And so we wanted our students to have that kind of independence to solve problems on their own. And we worked to build student efficacy. And so we had that three levels. We had that individual teacher efficacy, student efficacy, and then collective teacher efficacy.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the points that I mentioned, the first point, which I've been on for quite a little bit, is examine your culture. But do you
Mm-hmm.
speak the language of efficacy? Do your
Yeah.
students speak the language of efficacy? Is it we? Is it team? Or is it I? Those all are a part of your culture. When you
Mm-hmm.
look at your culture, do you see teachers collaborating together? Whether it's book studies, we had those kinds of things going on, all kinds of things that show that you're ready to broach that whole notion of working together better. Another example of collective teacher efficacy was when I was a new principal at Carl Wilde Elementary School. I had a guy who was, they called him my work husband because he was just very dedicated to the field. And we
Mm-hmm.
spent many nights talking together and thinking about ways to support students. He came to me just in the hallway one day and said, "You know what? I'd like for us to departmentalize. I'll teach the math," which he was a math genius, "and my partner, she'll teach the ELA," and they had it all divided out about science and all of that. And so he said, "What do you think about that?" I said, "Well, you know what I am. I'm results oriented. So if you all think you can do it, have at it." Did they ever? You would not have believed all of the things that were happening with the students, with the teachers feeling empowered, with the
Mm-hmm.
teachers doing the hard work, especially because at that time the school was 65% ESL or ENL, English as a new language, whichever you want to consider it. So they did the hard work. I think that year, 95% of the students pass the math portion of our state test because they got together and worked it out and challenged themselves to meet the needs in their lanes. So I've seen that happen at that school at grade 5, at grade 4, at grade 1. I mean, I could tell you even more stories because that was the dedication they felt and the empowerment, which made other grades say, well, maybe we should try to departmentalize.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well,
it
and
can inspire other
uh-huh.
teams.
And I think this idea that you as an individual are that results oriented piece falls right well into collective teacher efficacy, because again, there's this evidence, right? So in order for us to start to build collective teacher efficacy, if we're starting kind of from the ground up, or to deepen that, we need to make sure that our teachers are not just talking about the things that they're doing and the learning that's happening in their classrooms, but they're showing it. They are sharing artifacts. They're maybe even sharing video clips of things happening in their classroom, or they're opening their doors so others can see if they have the availability. Personally, I think video is the best way to do that, because then it can be captured and viewed anytime, anywhere, as long as you've got a safe platform to do that in. But
That's right.
But it really is about not just having this space for teachers to talk about the teaching and learning, but also having them bring in some of the evidence of that.
Exactly.
So, and the results, right? That results,
That's right.
that results oriented. So let's
celebrating the student work. I mean, that was all a part of it. So we grew not only as professionals, but we began to respect and appreciate each other's contributions and work. And so it made for good teams. When I think about 21st century skills that we want our children to have, one of them is collaboration and one of them is collaboration. The other is communication. You know those skills, and I'm sure our audience does too. But to demonstrate that with the students, so they see it and they know how to work together with projects and book talks and other things that are done, problem-based learning in the classroom, all of those things, they see the examples from the staff of being collaborative team players.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it takes a certain element of psychological safety, or kind of that trust across teams. I remember I taught middle school, and so our students were always amazed, slightly annoyed, but it was a great example when we would take some units that were cross-curricular and had really good cross-curricular ties, and we would even co-teach. We would combine our classes together. Or they were like, Miss Camp, this isn't science, this is reading. And I'm like, well, but we read in science. So we're reading those science readers to support what the science teacher was doing in their classroom. So that's that little annoyed part. They're like, oh, again, you guys are in cahoots together. But again, it's a great example for that collaboration.
And with the special ed team members too, the same thing happened.
That's what I was. I was a special ed teacher. Yeah.
Yes. And that's my background. I was a special ed teacher for many years before I became a principal. But the special ed team members, they co-taught together with the regular ed or the general ed teachers. So there's a lot of benefit to examining your culture and being a cheerleader for teachers that want to take risks and step out the box, and empowering them to go for it. There's a lot to that, encouraging them to work together, not just to cooperate to get a project done, but let's work together for the advancement of the students.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm just looking to see if I have on my desk my book from Jenny Donahue, who was at our Better Together, Leading Collective Efficacy. I don't think I have it at this desk, but it is a great one. It's got a lot of great points. So now, Joyce, you've talked a lot about the administrator, right? The campus principal or assistant principal and their role, again, examining that existing culture and identifying strengths and where we might be able to bring in more of that collaborative, collective piece where we can start to bring space and activities that will help teachers look at evidence of the
Mm-hmm.
amazing things that are happening. But what about for the instructional coach? Do you have ideas for their role in inspiring and developing collective teacher efficacy?
I think the same thing happens with the leadership team in general.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the instructional coach can do collaborative book studies that teachers volunteer to attend.
Mm-hmm.
We've noticed a problem of practice with X, Y, and Z. We're going to have a collaborative book study. If you would like to join us to be a part of that, or an after school workshop where we talk about team. And years ago, there was this company that advertised, and team said the letter stood for, the acronym was together, everyone achieves more. I don't know if you've seen that team.
I do
Together,
remember
yes,
that.
yes. And so the instructional coach can use the times at PLCs, because a lot of times people do use their instructional coaches to
Facilitate.
co-facilitate
Mhm.
PLCs and whatnot, and just everyone have that same language of team. I'm a
Mhm.
big fan of and a member of um, John Maxwell's team, and
Mhm.
John Maxwell says, not one of us is as smart as all of us.
Mm.
So that is a motto that if you want to build collective efficacy, that should be recanted time and time again. So the instructional coach can share that at those points when there's an opportunity to get with the principal and work together to plan those kinds of things that are going to be collaborative for the staff, whether it's
Mhm.
vertical articulation across the grade levels or horizontal articulation. There's much that the coach can do in that regard as well.
Yeah. I think also, again, going back to my points of the episode last week, were, as we are as coaches and even as administrators, as we're doing walkthroughs, as we're in classrooms working with teachers, or just getting the opportunity because we're freed up during a period to see the great things that are happening, making sure that one, we make the teacher know that we saw that maybe they didn't even recognize that
Yeah.
great thing was happening, but two, also then sharing that with the rest of the team.
Yes.
But I also think that supporting the collective efficacy also means that, again, as you've mentioned with the administrators, you don't always have to be the one leading it or the one who knows everything about something. Really, that supporting the and empowering the individuals on your campus to say, I've got some ideas for that, but who's actually probably the better person to talk to? Miss Gibbs down the hall. Go check it out
Yeah.
because I've seen her doing those things, and then
Yes.
I can help you with whatever you guys decide, right? So really
Yes.
kind of starting to support peer collaboration, peer
That's
coaching
right.
even. And I think that's great for a coach as well, or an administrator who doesn't have a coach, to not have to hold all of that on your shoulder, to be the
That's
expert,
right.
to be the one that supports every individual, but also, kind of creating and empowering this army, this collective of folks who can support
Yeah.
each other.
Yes, indeed. I agree with you
Yeah.
wholeheartedly. Yeah.
Now, yeah, yeah. Well, what about the teachers? Because they're a big part of it, right? It's not just
That's right.
cooperation, you said, and I love that cooperation versus that collective teacher efficacy. It's the difference between showing up and just doing the minimum, or doing the job, even doing the job well, and really being 100% head in the game, headed with the
Right.
team. So, what's their role in inspiring and developing teacher collective efficacy? What does it look like?
I
Give us
think
some
they've
ideas for
got to
that.
be cheerleaders for each other. I think
Yeah.
they've got to build their own knowledge and background and take professional development seriously and get in there and say to the principal, this is really what we need given this problem of practice or whatever, to help lead that charge, because the principal doesn't always know. I mean, we do our walkthroughs and our observations and all of that, but the people that are in the trenches know it better than we do, making the instructional coach aware, making the principal or assistant principal aware, being the cheerleader, lifting each other up, encouraging each other, visiting each other's room and highlighting in PLCs. You know, I went to such and such room the other day and she really had a good lesson on such and such. And I tell you, one of the things that was the joy of being a principal was when the teachers were trying new strategies or had worked the strategy through till they owned it. And they would send me a note and say, I'm going to be doing X, Y, and D strategy at 10 o'clock. Can you come in and see it? I mean, that was such a joy. So they've got to lift each other up and encourage one another, especially those new team members, because those new team members sometimes are going to feel like, I don't have any efficacy at all. What is that? I don't have any confidence. And have high expectations for your team. Everyone concerned with the students should have those high expectations. And I wish, Cory, I could say that that happens a lot.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't. And so then the children are the ones that miss out. And,
Mhm.
and you don't bring your best as a staff member if your staff doesn't hold high expectations for you too. You're a
Mhm.
part of the team. Bring your A game. And we always said that. Bring your A game. So I use a lot of basketball
I love
analogies
it.
and
Yeah,
whatnot
perfect
because,
timing too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because every day you need to understand minutes matter and you make the difference.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things we did is we um, worked on them lifting each other up. The second thing I wanted to say as a way to inspire um, efficacy is what you said earlier about the structures in the school, whether it's PLC or PD. Um, we need to have consistent structures in the school and ways that we lift each other up and call for collaboration. Um, I am very familiar, I'm sure you are, with the PLC 4, the 4
Mhm.
questions, what is it that we want our students to know and how we're going to know if they know it and what are we going to do if they don't know it and all of that. And in recent literature, Fry and Fisher, Fry, and I can't remember, Mario, I think maybe, but Fisher
Mhm.
and Fry for sure, they wrote an article in Leaning Forward about asking 5 questions instead of 4.
Yes,
Did you
yes.
see that?
I did. Yeah, and we had Doug and Nancy on for a
Oh,
webinar, the
oh,
PLC Plus.
yes.
Yes. We'll have
So,
to link that in the takeaways because that's a great one.
yes.
Yeah.
So those 5 questions are key. Who are our winners and who are not? I mean,
Yeah.
it's a whole different slant on things when you ask those 5 questions in PLCs. So it's getting everyone involved and everyone feeling like I have a stake in high stakes learning. I have a
Yeah.
stake. I've got a place. I fit. I belong. I can help the team. So and sometimes in all of this, I would say my role right now is just being a broker of services. They've got the other thing, but if they want to attend a workshop, I remember one time taking 20 of my team members to a workshop in Las Vegas. There were some things there that we wanted to cultivate in our culture. And
Mhm.
so we all went and we all got something different out of it that served to build the team. Um, and we normed some things. I have always had a writing club in January until the time that we had writing for the high stakes test in our state in Indiana. And so the third graders who had never had the pressure of writing and paragraphing like it occurred at the time, I know things are different now. Um, that was their space to practice with me.
Right.
And sometimes I had teachers there and I would pay them. I wouldn't get paid. I'd open the building, I'd teach, I'd have a small group, they'd have a small group. And so one year we had 99 third graders. And so my friend, I always had people that I collaborated with. They would come by on the weekends knowing that I was at school. And so she said, it's like Monday, all those cars are lined up to pick up their children. I said, yeah. She said, how do you get them here? I said, it's the norm of our culture that if you have a third grader, if you can get them free tutoring from the experts on Saturday, I'm going to feed them a meal, give them a snack, and we're going to learn about how to write. We write to change the world. We write to share our opinions, whatever. Um, and I had 90 of the 99 kids there that Saturday. Those kids came and they enjoyed it. We made it fun. And so part of this efficacy is letting your parents know if you help us, we can do it. Now,
Right.
that doesn't mean you have to be at school every day. We know you work, we're on our job too. But if you get them here, we can help them. So giving the parents that whole notion of power, that I'm on the team too, and I can get them um, to school. One time the superintendent came to a PTO meeting and our state graded the schools, and we were an A school, and so he came, and I guess he thought he was gonna catch us not knowing what's going on, but I always kept my parents informed. And so he said, well, he was our speaker that evening, and so he said, well, do you all know what's going on at your school? And they said yes, even though most of them were Spanish speaking. We had an interpreter at these meetings. And so he said, and do you know what your grade is? And they all said in unison, an A. Because you got to keep the parents in the loop too.
Yeah.
And when we weren't an A, we talked about that too. And we talked about what we can do to bring that up, or if there was a problem with our culture. So I would say having those consistent structures, places where we can calibrate work and recalibrate, where we can lift each other up, having culture. And then you already mentioned my third point, which is psychological safety. Safety to say, yeah, we didn't call that right, so we got to go back to the drawing board, or
Right.
what have you. You got to have that safety where people feel respected, acknowledged, and that they feel that they can make a suggestion. You don't have to take it, but I can put it out there. And so that psychological safety is really needed in a lot of schools. We're under such pressure. I say we, even though I'm not a principal or a teacher anymore. I am working with an organization right now called the Indiana Council on Educating Students of Color. So I still get to teach a little bit, and I'm over the after school program trying to beef it up so we can accelerate the learning there. I got to do that when I leave here. But the whole notion of we're under such pressure that we've got to make sure that everyone feels safe to share. There's got to be that place. And if you just Google psychological safety, there are wonderful hints of things you can do so people feel that they can trust you. You can build trust. You can have them to be able to communicate with each other, learn from each other, all those things.
One of my favorite books on psychological safety is the Fearless Organization. So
I don't have that one. I'll have to get it.
It is great. It is a great book, written by Amy Edmondson herself, who kind of coined the term. So, you bring up so many amazing strategies and points around the importance of collective efficacy, the benefits of it. What I love is that you brought us some actual examples of it from your work, and I think that's powerful. And again, psychological safety, it's hard to have that when you don't feel like you're really a part of a team, a collective, a community. My favorite point, my favorite takeaway, I think, for me is the reminder that it's not just collective teacher efficacy, it's collective efficacy for your community, right? It's our parents too. It's not just our teachers and who need to feel it. It's not just our coaches and our administrators who have to foster that. Teachers have a role in that. Parents have a role in that. So I think that's really powerful. I want to let folks know that we've got some more videos and resources around teacher collective efficacy in the notes and takeaways from Joyce today. And we'll also add in a couple of these books and resources that we mentioned throughout the show. If you've signed up for the Coach Replay show, you get this right into your inbox along with our episode after it goes live every week. But if not, that's in our learning center. So Joyce, it's such a pleasure to have you on. We'll have to have you come back with
I would
Jasmine so we
love
can see the
to.
mother-daughter duo together.
Yes, that would be
Yeah.
fantastic. I just
Wonderful.
say as a final note, you've got to have that passion for the work.
Mm-hmm.
If you have that passion for the work, then it puts you in good stead with what can happen for your team. And it's important for us to lift each other up and to take responsible for every child that is a part of our section, if you're in middle school or high
Mm-hmm.
school, or your classroom or your team at grade 1 or what have you, that we all take responsibility for those children and that we do everything in our power to help them. And along the way, because we've joined together with this whole notion of teacher efficacy, it empowers us and it keeps us going, and it helps us to feel that we have the input in schooling that we need to do the job well.
Yeah. It doesn't just empower us. I think it drives us. It fuels us for sure. So
Exactly.
I love
I
it.
say it puts air in my balloon.
I like I like that. Yes. Well, that's perfect. Thank you again, Joyce, so much for coming on the show, sharing some of your examples and some of your, manageable strategies, right? Like starting with just taking a look at your culture and kind of
Mm-hmm.
going from there. So we'll
Yes,
have you
indeed.
back on again, hopefully
Okay.
next year. Have you back on
Okay.
with Jasmine.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Audience, be sure to download the notes and takeaways so you can get some additional resources around our topic today. And be sure to tune in next week for another episode of the Coach Replay Show. Bye, y'all.